The windshield wipers sweep back and forth, creating a hypnotic rhythm against the glass. Swish, thud. Swish, thud. Each pass clears a temporary arch of visibility in the gray wash of the world, only for the relentless rain to instantly blur it again. The winding road ahead cuts deep into the Pacific Northwest, somewhere on the wild, wet edge of the Olympic Peninsula. It is late October, the time of year when the world turns inward, and the sky has been a seamless sheet of slate gray since the sun rose this morning. The world here is overwhelmingly green. It is not just a color, but a physical presence that seems to press against the windows of the car. Even through the heavy curtain of rain, the towering hulks of the Douglas firs, western red cedars, and Sitka spruces loom on either side of the road like ancient guardians. Their massive trunks are dark with moisture, and their branches are draped in thick, velvety moss that hangs down like green beards. They press in close, creating a tunnel of emerald and slate, blocking out what little light remains in the afternoon sky. The light is fading fast, the day surrendering early to the heavy, water-laden cloud cover that hangs low enough to snag on the treetops. The car moves slowly, hands relaxed on the wheel. The tires hush against the wet asphalt, making a constant sizzling sound that speaks of deep water on the road. There is no other traffic. It feels as if the main current of the world has been left behind, turning into a quiet, forgotten eddy where time moves at the speed of falling water. The air inside the car is warm, the heater humming softly, but the chill radiates from the glass, a promise of the cool, crisp forest air waiting outside. The radio goes quiet, silencing the chatter of the news and the noise of the city, leaving only the static of the rain. The road narrows, the yellow center line fading away until the pavement gives way to gravel. Crunch, pop, crunch. The texture of the drive changes immediately. The car rocks gently, a soothing, boat-like motion, navigating potholes filled with rainwater that reflects the gray sky like confused mirrors. The texture of the road comes through the steering wheel, a shift from the smooth numbness of the highway to something more tactile, more grounded. This is driving on the earth now. The window rolls down just a crack, letting in the taste of the air. The sound of the forest rushes in. It is a complex layer of noise, a distant roar of wind in the canopy high above, sounding like the ocean, and the closer, sharper sound of water dripping from millions of pine needles. The air smells intensely fresh. It smells of ozone, of crushed pine needles, of wet earth, and that peculiar, clean, metallic scent of rain hitting asphalt and stone. A deep breath fills the lungs with the cold, damp air. It wakes the senses, sharpening everything after the long, warm drive. The turnoff must be close. The instructions were handwritten and precise. A gravel lane marked by a large cedar stump with a hollow center. Every stump looks ancient and moss-covered here, a graveyard of giants from a logging era long past. But then it appears, a massive, burnt-out cedar stump, standing like a ruined tower, ferns sprouting from its crown like a festive hat. The wheel turns. The car tires crunch onto the new path, climbing a gentle incline, pushing deeper into the woods. The trees seem to grow even taller here, if that is possible. Their tops are lost in the low-hanging clouds, making it feel as if the forest has no ceiling. Ferns, prehistoric and oversized, brush against the sides of the car with a soft, swishing sound, shaking heavy droplets of water onto the doors. The suspension creaks over tree roots. The car crawls now, barely moving faster than a walking pace, respecting the quiet of the woods. A profound sense of escape washes in. The noise, the deadlines, the endless scroll of screens, and the demands of the clock are falling away. This is driving into the quiet. The rain acts as a curtain, a liquid wall sealing off everything left behind. A roofline appears ahead through the trees. Dark shingles shining wet with rain. A sturdy stone chimney rising into the mist. The journey ends here. The car shifts into park, and the engine dies. The sudden silence is startling. Or rather, the absence of the mechanical engine noise reveals the true, rich soundtrack of the woods. It is not silent at all. It is a symphony of water, played on 1,000 different instruments. There is the drumming of the rain on the metal roof of the car, a steady, percussive beat. There is the softer pattering on the hood. There is the sound of rain dripping from the high branches onto the ferns below, a heavy, rhythmic plop, plop, plop that sounds almost like footsteps. And above it all, the wind sighs in the upper canopy, a sound like a distant ocean surf, rising and falling with the gusts. A moment passes, just listening, easing into the transition. The car ticks softly as the engine cools, the metal contracting in the damp air. The door opens and boots meet the ground. The air hits instantly, cool, damp, and rich with the scent of cedar and decaying maple leaves. It is the smell of the temperate rainforest, a scent that is millions of years old. It feels clean, scrubbing the city dust from the senses. Boots crunch on the wet gravel. A collar pulls up against the drizzle, which feels more like a heavy mist than rain. The cabin stands ahead, nestled into a small clearing. It is a simple A-frame structure, built of dark, weathered timber that blends perfectly into the forest tones. It looks like it grew here, rather than was built. A large wooden deck wraps around the front, sheltered by the wide, overhanging eaves of the roof. The wooden steps are slick with rain and scattered with golden pine needles that have plastered themselves to the wood. The front door waits at the top. The key is hidden under a loose stone in the planter, just as the owner promised. The metal is cold and heavy, a brass key that feels substantial. The lock turns with a satisfying, heavy clunk, the sound of a well-oiled tumbler. The door swings open with a faint creak. Inside, the interior is dim, illuminated only by the gray, aquatic light filtering through the large, triangular window at the front of the A-frame. But it is warm. Or at least, it feels warmer than the outside air. It smells of wood smoke, old paper, pine resin, and faint hints of coffee from mornings past. It is a dry, preserved smell, the smell of a sanctuary. The bags drop on the floor, and the sound echoes slightly in the high space. The ceiling soars up to the peak of the roof, 20 feet above. Massive wooden beams crisscross the space, holding the structure against the elements. To the left, there is a small kitchen with open shelving stacked with ceramic plates. To the right, a large stone fireplace, cold and dark, dominates the wall. In the corner, a spiral staircase winds its way up to the sleeping loft. The window draws attention. It is huge, floor-to-ceiling glass that makes up the entire front wall. Standing there feels like being still outside. The forest presses right up to the glass. The rain falls in the twilight, streaking the pane. This is solitude. Miles from the nearest neighbor. Miles from the nearest cell tower. The solitude wraps around like a heavy, comforting blanket. The wet coat comes off, shaking water droplets onto the mat, and hangs on a thick wooden peg by the door. First things first. The cabin is chilly, holding the cold of the unoccupied days. Heat is needed. The fireplace waits. It is the heart of this home, and it needs to be woken up. The fire has started, but the cabin still feels slightly foreign, a space for guests rather than inhabitants. To bridge that gap, the domestic ritual of unpacking begins. The heavy paper bag of groceries comes up from the floor. The paper is cool and slightly damp from the journey. The kitchen area has counters made of thick butcher block, scarred with the knife marks of decades of cooking. They feel smooth and oily under the fingertips. The unloading begins. First, a bag of coffee beans. Dark roast. The bag opens just to catch the smell, that rich, earth-heavy aroma that promises warmth. It finds a place on the shelf, next to a collection of ceramic mugs. Next, a jar of local honey, glowing amber in the dim light. A block of sharp cheddar cheese wrapped in wax paper. A bag of apples, crisp and red. Each item is placed with intention. This is not just storing food, it is claiming the space. It is saying, someone lives here now, even if just for a few days. Attention turns to the cupboards. They open one by one. The hinges squeak softly. Inside, the history of the cabin is written in mismatched crockery. There are heavy stoneware plates with chipped rims. There are delicate teacups with faded floral patterns, perhaps left by a grandmother. There is a cast iron skillet, black and seasoned, hanging from a hook. A thumb runs along the bottom of the pan. It is smooth as glass, the result of 1,000 breakfasts. A drawer reveals silverware. The forks and spoons are heavy, tarnished silver, not modern stainless steel. They have weight. They feel substantial in the hand. The small bookshelf near the kitchen table draws attention. It is filled with the kind of ephemera that accumulates in holiday homes. A deck of playing cards, softened by use, the edges fuzzy. A box of wooden dominoes. A tin of tea, leaves that smells of bergamot. A map of the local trails comes out. It is folded and refolded so many times that the creases are white and fraying. It spreads out on the table. A finger traces the contour lines. The blue line of the river appears, the green shading of the national park, the black dotted lines of the hiking paths. This is orientation. This is building a mental map of the sanctuary. The map folds and returns to the shelf, next to a jar of sea glass. The cabin is beginning to feel familiar. The shadows are less imposing. The objects are introducing themselves. The feeling of visitor fades. The feeling of resident grows. Kneeling before the hearth. The stone is cold to the touch, rough and solid. The previous guest has left the fireplace clean, a small pile of gray ash swept neatly to the back, ghost memories of previous warmth. There is a large wicker basket of wood beside the hearth. The contents are satisfying. Split logs of dry cedar, smelling spicy and sharp. A bundle of kindling, thin sticks of pine and fir. And a stack of old newspapers, yellowed at the edges. The ritual begins. Building a fire is an architecture of its own. It requires patience and structure. You cannot rush it, or it will smother. The newspaper crumples into loose balls, placed in the center of the iron grate. The sound of the paper crinkling is dry and crisp in the damp afternoon. Next, the kindling. A small teepee shape forms over the paper, the sticks leaning against each other, leaving plenty of gaps for the air to flow. Fire needs to breathe. Then, 2 smaller logs, placed on either side of the teepee as a foundation, walls to contain the heat. The box of long wooden matches waits on the mantel. A match strikes against the side of the box. The sound is sharp in the quiet room. Scritch, F womb. The flame flares to life, smelling of sulfur. It is small, trembling on the end of the wooden stick, a tiny seed of heat. It touches the paper in 3 places. The edges of the newsprint curl and blacken. An orange glow spreads rapidly, eating the words and the images. Smoke begins to drift up the chimney, drafting perfectly. The crackle comes as the fire catches the dry pine sticks. Snap. Pop. The flame grows taller, licking at the cedar logs, tasting the wood. This deserves watching, mesmerized. Humans have watched fires for 1,000,000 years. It is in our DNA. The flickering light triggers a deep, primitive sense of safety. It pushes back the dark. It keeps the predators at bay. The wait continues until the smaller logs are fully engaged, the bark glowing red. Then a larger log, placed carefully across the top. The fire accepts it. The flames wrap around the bark like liquid fingers. Sitting back on heels, watching the transformation. The cold air in the room begins to yield. A circle of warmth radiates from the hearth, touching face, touching hands. It feels like a physical embrace. The smell of wood smoke drifts into the room, not choking, but pleasant. A cozy, nostalgic scent that triggers memories of camping trips and winter holidays. Standing up, brushing the wood dust from hands, moving to the kitchen. The heavy kettle fills with cold water from the tap and settles on the gas stove. The dial turns. The blue flame of the burner hisses to life. While the water begins to heat, attention returns to the fire. It is roaring now. The orange light dances on the wooden walls, chasing away the shadows of the late afternoon. The cabin has a heartbeat now. The fire is the pulse. The gray gloom outside feels less oppressive. In fact, it makes the interior feel even brighter and richer by contrast. Safe inside. The storm is outside. This separation, this barrier between the elements and the comfort, is the very essence of coziness. The wait begins for the kettle to whistle. The fire is established and banking coals. The kettle has boiled, and a cup of hot tea has warmed the insides. But before the light fades completely from the sky, the urge comes to go back out. To feel the rain on the face. To be part of the forest for a moment, not just an observer. The boots go back on, laced tight against the damp. A heavy yellow raincoat comes off the hook by the door. It is stiff and smells of rubber, a sturdy armor against the weather. The porch waits outside. A deep breath fills the lungs. The rain has softened to a steady, rhythmic drizzle. The narrow deer path leads behind the cabin. The ground is spongy, a thick carpet of pine needles and decaying leaves that has built up over decades. It springs back underfoot, soft and yielding. Everything is wet. The world is glossed in moisture. The ferns are bowed down with the weight of the water, their fronds touching the ground. A huckleberry bush brushes past, and a shower of cold drops lands on the hand, startling and refreshing. The walk is slow. There is no destination. This is not a hike, it is a wander. A nurse log demands attention, a fallen giant, dead for decades, now bringing new life. It is covered in a thick blanket of bright green moss. Tiny hemlock saplings are growing out of its rotting wood, feeding on the nutrients of their ancestor. Mushrooms, small and brown, cluster in the crevices like little villages. A hand reaches out and touches the moss. It is impossibly soft, like wet velvet. It holds water like a sponge, When pressed, water wells up around the indentation. The sound of moving water comes, distinct from the falling rain. Following it leads to a small creek, cutting through the forest floor a few yards away. The water is clear and cold, rushing over smooth gray stones. It swirls and eddies, carrying away fallen yellow maple leaves. Standing on the bank, watching the water move. The sound is peaceful. White noise. Continuous. Ancient. A deep breath. The petrichor is stronger here. The smell of wet earth and wet stone. The small details that usually go unseen reveal themselves. A spider web, miraculously intact, strung between two blackberry canes. It is covered in tiny beads of water, hanging like a diamond necklace. A black beetle, navigating the chaotic terrain of a wet maple leaf. The way the mist clings to the upper branches of the spruce trees, ghost-like and silent. The feeling of being small. The forest is vast, old, and indifferent. It does not care about emails. It does not care about stress. It is not impressed by job titles. It just is. And being here, just standing in the rain in a yellow coat, there is a connection to that stillness. Hair damp where the hood has slipped back. Face cool. But alive. Truly alive. The turn back toward the cabin begins. Through the trees, the warm orange glow of the fire shows in the window. It calls outward. A beacon of warmth in the cool blue evening. Time to head back, ready for the shelter. The rain has eased slightly, but the wind is picking up, whistling through the eaves of the cabin. The fire in the hearth will be hungry later tonight. The few logs inside will not be enough to last until morning. Time to visit the woodshed. The boots go back on. The leather is still warm from before. The yellow raincoat comes on again, the ritual of buttoning the snaps satisfying. Snap, snap, snap. A canvas carrier for the wood comes off the hook. The back door opens. The air is colder now. The temperature has dropped with the sun. The woodshed is a small, three-walled structure about 20 yards from the cabin, tucked under the shelter of a massive hemlock tree. The duckboards provide footing, wooden planks laid over the muddy path. They are slick with wet moss. The shed waits. It is a cathedral of timber. Wall-to-wall stacks of split logs. There is a hierarchy here. On the left, the kindling, brittle, dry sticks of pine that snap easily. In the middle, the softwood, cedar and fir, which burn hot and fast, smelling of spice and resin. On the right, the hardwood, maple and alder, heavy and dense, for the slow, long burn of the deep night. The smell inside the shed is intoxicating. It smells of sawdust, of curring sap, of dry rot of earth. It is a masculine, elemental scent. Listening reveals a quiet shelter from the rain, protected by the tin roof. The rustle of a mouse scurrying somewhere in the woodpile. A tiny neighbor settling in for the night. Loading the carrier begins. 3 large logs of maple for the overnight burn. They are heavy, the bark rough against the gloves. A few pieces of cedar for the scent. A handful of kindling. The carrier is heavy now, the canvas straps digging slightly into the hand. It feels good. It feels like work. There is a satisfaction in gathering your own heat. In the city, heat is a thermostat. You turn a dial. It is abstract. Here, heat is weight. Heat is effort. Heat is a physical object carried in the arms. The turn back to the cabin begins. The smoke curls from the chimney, snatched away by the wind. The yellow light glows in the window. The trudge back continues, the weight of the wood grounding feet to the earth. Mud kicks off the boots at the door. The harvest comes inside, piling next to the hearth. The smell of the cold, fresh wood mixes with the smell of the burning fire. Stocked. Prepared. Let the storm blow. The fuel is ready. Back inside. The wet raincoat strips off and hangs near the door to drip dry. The warmth of the room embraces again. It feels thicker now, heavier, laden with the smell of the cedar fire. It is fully dark outside now. The window is a black mirror, reflecting the flames and the interior of the cabin. The forest has disappeared into the night. Hunger arrives. The cool air has sharpened the appetite. The small kitchen area waits. The paper bag of groceries unpacks. Onions with their papery skins. Carrots still dusted with soil. Potatoes. Celery. A loaf of rust-colored, crusty bread. A simple vegetable stew seems right. Something hearty and warming. A heavy cast-iron pot comes from the cupboard and settles on the stove. A thick wooden cutting board and a knife. The chopping begins. Chop, chop, chop. The rhythmic sound of the knife hitting the wood is satisfying and domestic. The carrots peel, revealing the bright orange beneath the earth. The onions dice. Eyes sting slightly, but it does not matter. It feels real. The onions toss into the pot with a knob of butter. They sizzle, a sharp, aggressive sound that softens as they begin to sweat and turn translucent. The smell of cooking onions fills the cabin. It is a homely code. It signals safety and sustenance to the brain. The rest of the vegetables go in. Vegetable stock pours over them. Herbs follow, some dried thyme and a singular bay leaf. The heat turns down to a low simmer. The pot begins to bubble gently. Blup. 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 Steam rises, catching the light from the kitchen bulb, fogging the window near the stove slightly. While the soup cooks, the bread slices. The crust is thick and hard. The inside is soft and airy. The wait begins. Cooking is about waiting. It is about letting time do the work. Standing by the stove, holding a wooden spoon, stirring occasionally. No multitasking. No phone checking. Just making soup. The rain drums on the roof, heavier now. 20 minutes later, it is ready. The steaming stew ladles into a deep ceramic bowl. The bowl and the bread travel to the thick rug in front of the fireplace. Sitting cross-legged on the floor, abandoning the table for the proximity of the fire. The heat of the fire hits the front. The warmth of the soup warms the hands through the ceramic. A spoonful lifts. It is hot, savory, and perfect. It is simple food. But here, in the woods, after a walk in the rain, it tastes like a feast fit for royalty. The bread dips into the broth, soaking up the flavor. Eating slowly, watching the flames dance. The wind howls outside, rattling the window pane in its frame, trying to find a way in. But it cannot reach. Fortified by the fire and the food. A deep, resonating contentment settles in. Dinner is finished. The bowl is washed and drying on the rack. The evening stretches out ahead. There is no television here. No internet meant to distract. Just time. An ocean of time. The cabin deserves proper exploration now. The spiral staircase leads to the loft. The wooden steps creak underfoot, a friendly, organic sound like the house is talking. The loft is cozy. The ceiling is low here, formed by the apex of the A-frame roof. There is a large bed with a thick white duvet that looks like a cloud. And there is a built-in bookshelf. The titles reveal themselves, a finger running along the spines. It is a collection of left-behind paperbacks and cabin staples. Some thrillers. A field guide to Pacific Northwest mushrooms. A few dog-eared classics. An old, hardcover anthology of nature poetry comes out. The pages are yellowed and smell of vanilla and age. Back downstairs, but instead of the floor, the armchair by the fire. It is an overstuffed leather chair, cognac-colored, worn soft and buttery by years of use. It sighs when sat upon. Curling up, legs tucking under, pulling a wool blanket over the lap. The book opens. A poem by Mary Oliver. It talks about wild geese and the world offering itself to your imagination. It reads twice. Then the book closes and the listening begins. The rain has intensified. It is pounding on the roof now. Because the loft is right under the roof, the sound is loud. A continuous, heavy roar. It is the ultimate white noise. It masks every other sound in the world. It creates a cocoon of sound. Drowsiness creeps in. The heavy food, the warmth of the fire, the hypnotic sound of the rain. Eyelids feel heavy. The fire dies down. The aggressive yellow flames are gone, replaced by a bed of glowing red embers. They pulse with heat, like breathing. Occasionally, a log shifts and collapses, thump, sending a shower of golden sparks shooting up the chimney. Looking around the cabin. The shadows are long now, stretching across the floorboards. The light is soft, amber and gold. A profound sense of peace settles. Worries feel very far away, disconnected. They are back in the city, back in the grid, stuck in traffic. Here, there is only the fire, the wood, and the rain. Breathing slows. The book slides from the hand to the lap. The rhythm of the storm is slowing the heart rate. It is time to sleep. The evening has deepened. The soup is finished, the bowls put away. The fire is crackling steadily. But there is a chill in the bones from the woodshed run that will not quite shake. A deeper warmth is craved. The bathroom waits at the back of the cabin. It is a small room, but it holds a treasure, a deep cast-iron clawfoot tub. It sits on a tiled floor, white and gleaming, independent of the walls. The taps turn. The pipes groan and shudder, the sound of plumbing that has not been used in a week, before a torrent of hot water bursts forth. Steam rises immediately, filling the small room with a white, misty fog. A capful of bath oil pours into the water. Lavender and eucalyptus. The scent explodes in the steam, medicinal and relaxing. The tub fills slowly. The water level rises, mesmerizing swirls of heat. Clothes come off. The air is cool on skin, making the anticipation of the water even sweeter. One foot steps in. The heat is intense, bordering on too hot, but the cold foot welcomes it. 2 feet. Lowering slowly. The water rises around ankles, knees, waist, chest. Sliding down until the water touches the chin. A long, involuntary sigh escapes. The heat penetrates deep into the muscle. The tension in the back, the stiffness in the legs from the drive, it all dissolves. Weightless. Suspended in a warm, scented void. The room is completely fogged up now. The mirror is opaque. The window is dripping with condensation. It feels like being inside a cloud. Eyes close. The sounds of the house emerge. The distant crackle of the fire in the main room. The rain lashing against the bathroom window. The drip of the tap. A long time passes. Time loses its meaning in the water. A single drop of condensation rolls down the cold tile of the wall, tracing a path through the steam. Thinking about nothing. The mind is a blank slate, washed clean by the heat. When the water finally begins to cool, the plug pulls. The sound of the water draining is a gurgling vortex. Standing up, heavy and relaxed. A thick, oversized towel wraps around, rough and scrubbing against soft skin. Pink and scrubbed and renewed. Stepping out onto the bath mat. Ready for sleep. The fire gets banked, spreading the ashes to cover the coals so they might still be warm in the morning to start the day. The spiral stairs climb one last time, a hand sliding along the smooth wooden railing. The loft is warmer than the downstairs, the heat having risen and trapped itself in the peak of the roof. A small bedside lamp turns on. It casts a warm, yellow pool of light on the wooden wall, creating a small circle of visibility. Comfortable pajamas. Soft flannel. Pure cotton. The duvet pulls back. It is heavy, billowy, filled with down. The sheets underneath are crisp and cool to the touch. Climbing in. The mattress is soft. The body sinks into it. The duvet pulls up to the chin, a burial in warmth. Lying there for a moment, looking up at the ceiling beams. Beams that were once trees in this very forest, now watching over sleep. A hand reaches out and clicks off the lamp. Darkness. Absolute, total coolness and darkness. There are no streetlights here. No light pollution from the city. No LEDs blinking on appliances. Just the velvet black. But then, as eyes adjust, a faint, ghostly gray light appears from the triangular window. The moon must be trying to break through the storm clouds. The sound of the rain is right above, separated only by shingles and wood. Tap, 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 tap. It is louder now that the lights are out. It is a lullaby. Eyes close. Visualizing the forest outside. The trees standing in the dark, drinking the rain, their roots soaking up the moisture. The creek rushing over the smooth stones. The moss swelling with water. The cabin as a tiny island of warmth and dryness in the vast, wet wilderness. Breathing in a specific rhythm. In and out. The body relaxes. The tension in the shoulders melts into the mattress. The legs feel heavy. Thoughts slow down. They drift like leaves on a stream, spinning slowly and then disappearing. The sound of the rain washes them away. There is nothing to do. Nothing to fix. Nothing to worry about. Just this moment. Safe. Warm. Dry. Drifting. Drifting. Into the deep, green sleep of the forest. Good night. The second night at the cabin continues the rain's patient work. The sound on the roof has become background music, so constant it fades from conscious notice, only becoming apparent when attention is directed to it. The fire has burned down to a bed of glowing coals, the room lit only by their red light and the small lamp by the reading chair. The book lies open but unread, the eyes too tired for words, the mind too content for narrative. Rising to add logs to the fire. The motion is practiced now, familiar after days of tending this same stove. Opening the door carefully, placing the logs just so, adjusting the damper to encourage the flames without choking them. The new logs catch slowly, orange flames licking at the bark, smoke curling upward, the fire rebuilding itself from the foundation of coals. Within 10 minutes, the flames are dancing again, casting moving shadows on the wooden walls. Walking to the window. The rain continues, invisible in the darkness but audible, a constant shush punctuated by the drip of the overloaded gutters. The forest beyond is a wall of black, no moon, no stars, just the sound of water on leaves. What is it about rain that is so comforting? Perhaps something ancient, something from the childhood of the species. Rain means water, means life, means the crops will grow. But it also means shelter, means inside, means safety from the wet and cold. Standing at the window for a long time, just watching and listening. The glass reflects the fire behind, creating a double image. The dark forest outside, the warm room within. Both are real. Both are here. Eventually returning to the chair, to the book that will not be read. The warmth of the fire is like a blanket. The sound of the rain is like breathing. The mind empties slowly, thought by thought, until only sensation remains. Almost asleep in the chair. The head nods, catches, nods again. Better to move to the bed before sleep takes over completely. Rising, banking the fire for the night, dimming the damper so it will burn slow and steady until morning. The lamp goes out. The cabin is dark, except for the faint glow from the stove. Finding the bed by memory and touch. The sheets are cold for a moment, then warm with body heat. The rain continues, seeming louder now in the darkness, a percussion symphony without rhythm or repetition. There is nothing to do. There is nowhere to be. There is only this moment, this bed, this rain. When was the last time life offered such simplicity? The modern world is noise and light and constant connection. But here, in this cabin, the world contracts to a single room, a single sound, a single breath. This is why people seek isolation. Not to escape the world, but to find themselves within it. To strip away the layers of distraction until only the essential remains. The essential is warmth. The essential is shelter. The essential is the knowledge that the world continues outside while the self is safe within. Sleep now. The rain will sing all night. The fire will tend itself. The forest will stand its ancient watch. And in the morning, there will be coffee to make and trails to walk and another day of being here, being present, being alive in this beautiful, wild place. But that is tomorrow. Tonight is for rest. Tonight is for rain. Tonight is for the deep, dreamless sleep of those who are exactly where they want to be. Good night. The afternoon in the rainy cabin takes on a particular quality of stillness. The rain has paused, leaving the forest dripping, every surface glistening with moisture. The air is cool and fresh, scrubbed clean by the hours of precipitation. Venturing onto the porch with a book and a blanket. The chair is slightly damp, but a folded towel solves that problem. Wrapping in the blanket, feeling the chill on the face while the body stays warm. Reading is different here. The words seem to matter more when there is nothing competing for attention. No phone buzzing. No email arriving. No sense that something else should be happening. There is only the book and the forest and the slowly drying afternoon. A bird calls from somewhere in the understory. The call is unfamiliar, possibly a winter wren, possibly something else entirely. It does not matter. The bird calls, and that is enough. The trees sway gently in a breeze that does not reach the porch. Their motion is hypnotic, the branches weaving and separating, the patterns never quite repeating. Watching them instead of reading, letting the book rest open on the lap. This is what the cabin offers that cannot be found elsewhere. Time that expands rather than contracts. Attention that focuses rather than fragments. The permission to simply be, without agenda, without obligation. The afternoon stretches. The light changes slowly, the gray brightening slightly as the clouds thin. Perhaps the sun will appear tomorrow. Perhaps the rain will return. It does not matter. The cabin is here. The fire is waiting inside. The evening will come when it comes. Returning inside as the chill penetrates the blanket's warmth. The fire needs feeding, and the ritual of building it back up fills a pleasant half hour. Kindling first, then small pieces, then the larger logs that will burn through dinner and into the evening. The fire catches and grows. The cabin warms. The kettle goes on for tea. The afternoon becomes evening through gradual transition rather than sharp boundary. This is how time passes in the forest. Not by the clock, but by the light, by the fire, by the rhythms of the body. We remember this rhythm from before we had clocks. The cabin lets us find it again. Dinner is simpler tonight. Soup from a pot, bread that was baked days ago but still serves. An apple for dessert. The simplicity is not deprivation, but clarity. What is needed? Nothing more. After dinner, back to the porch for a final observation of the darkness. The clouds have cleared enough to show stars through gaps. The forest is black and silent, resting after its soaking. No lights visible in any direction. No sounds but the drip of water from leaves. This solitude is rare. Most lives are thick with presence. Other people, other demands, other voices. Here there is only one voice, one demand, one presence. And strangely, that presence does not feel lonely. It feels complete. The cabin embraces its occupant. The forest stands guard. The night deepens. Time for sleep. Time for rest. Time to dream of rain. Breakfast at the cabin is a simple affair. Eggs scrambled on the camp stove, bread toasted over the fire, coffee brewed in the French press. The rain continues outside, drumming on the metal roof, streaming down the windows, making the forest beyond a gray-green blur. There is no urgency to go anywhere. The day stretches ahead with no obligations. A stack of books waits on the table, brought specifically for hours like this. A jigsaw puzzle is half completed on the card table, its pieces scattered like leaves. Choosing a book, a novel set in the Pacific Northwest, appropriate to the setting. Settling into the armchair by the window, the reading lamp creating a pool of light. The fire crackles in the stove, occasionally requiring attention, a log added or the damper adjusted. Reading for hours. The story unfolds, the characters become real, the outside world recedes. Occasionally looking up to watch the rain, to check the fire, to register the passage of time. Lunch is soup heated on the stovetop, the last of the butternut squash brought from home. It is warming and filling, perfect for the gray day. Eaten at the table by the window, watching the rain continue its patient work. The afternoon, brings a different kind of activity. Despite the weather, the urge to move is strong. Finding the rain gear, the waterproof jacket and pants, the rubber boots. Heading outside. The forest in rain is a different world. The scent is overpowering, all that green life breathing out, the petrichor of wet earth and decomposing leaves. The sound is layered, raindrops hitting leaves at different pitches. Walking the trail behind the cabin to the small waterfall. The path is muddy, slippery in places. The waterfall is transformed by the rain, now a roar, the water brown with runoff. Returning to the cabin, peeling off the wet layers. The warmth inside is delicious after the cold damp outside. Hands wrap around a fresh mug of tea. Evening comes early. Dinner is pasta with mushrooms and herbs. Eaten by the fire, the plate balanced on the knee. After dinner, just sitting, watching the flames, listening to the rain. The simplest days are sometimes the best. The morning after the rain-soaked walk brings a change. The clouds have thinned during the night, and now weak sunshine filters through, creating dappled patterns on the forest floor visible through the cabin window. Making breakfast with more care than the previous days. Pancakes on the camp stove, golden and fluffy, served with maple syrup from a local farm. Bacon crisping in the pan, its smell filling the cabin with warmth. Coffee, strong and black, the daily essential. Eating at the table by the window, watching the steam rise from the plate, watching the forest brighten as the clouds continue to lift. Perhaps today will be the day for the longer hike, the one that leads to the old-growth grove where the trees are truly ancient. Packing the day pack with care. Extra layers because the weather could still turn. Rain jacket rolled tight. Plenty of water. Trail mix and sandwiches. The map, though the trail is well marked. Setting out into the morning. The air is fresh and cool, scented with the particular perfume of wet evergreens. Douglas fir and western red cedar, Sitka spruce and hemlock, the great trees of the Pacific Northwest, dripping their gathered rain onto the understory below. The trail begins at the back of the cabin's clearing, a narrow path that winds into the forest. The first section is familiar now, passed many times on short walks. But today the plan is to go further, to reach the old-growth section where the trees are measured in centuries. The forest changes as the trail climbs. The younger trees give way to older ones, their trunks widening, their heights increasing. The understory thins as the canopy closes, the big trees capturing the light and leaving their smaller neighbors in permanent shade. After an hour of steady climbing, the old growth begins. The change is unmistakable. The trees here are not merely large, they are immense. Their trunks are wider than cars, their bark furrowed into deep ridges, their first branches appearing perhaps 50 meters above the ground. Some of the trees are 1,000 years old. They were saplings when the Norman conquest happened in England. They were mature when Columbus sailed. They have stood through empires rising and falling, through world wars and technological revolutions, through everything that humans consider history. Walking among them, the neck craning constantly upward, the eyes trying to follow the trunks to their crowns. But the crowns are lost in the mist that drifts through the canopy, creating an atmosphere that feels primordial, sacred. Finding a nurse log, one of the fallen giants that serves as a nursery for the next generation. Young trees sprout from its decomposing mass, their roots straddling the log, reaching down to the soil below. In a few centuries, the log will be entirely gone, but the trees it supported will remain, standing on stilt-like roots that mark where their cradle once lay. Sitting on a mossy boulder, eating a sandwich, just breathing the ancient air. The silence here is different from the silence of the cabin. It is thicker, older, inhabited by presences that cannot be seen but can certainly be felt. The old forests have their spirits. Not ghosts, not supernatural beings, but something. The accumulated presence of centuries of life and death, growth and decay. The feeling of being watched by trees that were here before memory and will be here after forgetting. Reluctantly beginning the descent. The afternoon is waning, the already dim light dimming further. The trail down is easier on the lungs, but harder on the knees, the constant braking creating its own kind of fatigue. Arriving back at the cabin as the evening clouds gather. Maybe more rain tonight. Maybe not. Either way, the stove will be lit, the fire will crackle, and the sleep will be deep. Something has shifted during this walk. The scale of self has adjusted. Among trees that have lived 1,000 years, human concerns seem appropriately small. The worries that seemed so important a few days ago are difficult to remember, difficult to care about. This is the gift of wilderness. Perspective. Proportion. The knowledge that the world was here before and will be here after, and that being part of it for a brief moment is privilege enough. The fire is easy to start now, the muscles knowing the rhythm. The flames rise. The warmth spreads. Another evening in the rain-soaked paradise of the Pacific Northwest. Dinner is simple, soup and bread and wine. There is no energy for cooking, no desire for complexity. Just fuel for the body, warmth for the soul. And then the chair by the fire. And then the sound of rain beginning again on the roof. And then the gradual surrender to sleep. Another night. Another gift. Another dream under the ancient trees. The third day at the cabin dawns with a change. The rain has stopped, though the clouds linger, soft and gray. The forest is dripping, every branch releasing its stored water, every leaf shedding droplets. Stepping out onto the porch with morning coffee. The air is fresh, washed clean, smelling of earth and green growth. A bird is singing, perhaps the first bird song in days, the creatures emerging from their rain shelters. Today feels right for exploration. Packing a small day pack with water, snacks, and a camera. The trails will be muddy but walkable. The forest will be at its most beautiful, moisture still clinging to everything. The main trail leads deeper into the old-growth forest. The trees here are enormous, Douglas firs and western red cedars that have stood for 500 years or more. Their trunks are wider than cars, their canopies lost in the gray sky above. The forest floor is covered in moss and ferns, every surface green and soft. The fallen logs, called nurse logs, support entire ecosystems, young trees sprouting from the decomposing wood, mushrooms clustering along the bark. Walking slowly, stopping often to look,